Welcome to Capital Logic. Most people think they understand Rolex, how engineered artificial scarcity turned a mass-produced watch into an impossible status symbol. They don't. Today we are going beneath the surface to show you what's actually happening. If that kind of analysis is what you're looking for, like this video and subscribe now. Here's what the numbers really say. Rolex, a company that mass-produces over 1 million watches annually, has convinced the world that its products are rare and exclusive, making them virtually impossible to buy. How they do it? And more importantly, what can you learn from their masterful strategy? Stay until the end. I'll break down 3 lessons from Rolex's Playbook you can apply to your business this week. If you want business breakdowns you can actually use, hit subscribe and the bell. Hans Wilsdorf, the visionary behind Rolex, didn't set out to create an exclusive luxury item. In fact, his initial ambition was almost the opposite, to craft a reliable, robust, and accessible timepiece. Think of it as the ultimate tool watch, designed not for the elite, but for anyone who needed precision and durability in their daily lives. This was a radical idea in the early 20th century, when watches were often delicate and prone to failure. Wilsdorf's genius lay in his relentless pursuit of technical perfection, a foundation that would eventually underpin everything Rolex became. He understood that a watch needed to withstand the rigors of real life. So in 1926, Rolex patented the Oyster case, the world's first truly waterproof watch case. This wasn't just a marketing gimmick. It was a revolutionary engineering feat to prove it. Wilsdorf orchestrated a masterstroke of early experiential marketing. In 1927, a young English swimmer named Mercedes Gleitze attempted to cross the English Channel. Strapped to her wrist was a Rolex Oyster. After more than 10 hours in the icy water, the watch emerged in perfect working order. This wasn't about status. It was about performance, about proving that a Rolex could endure where others failed. A few years later, in 1931, Rolex introduced the perpetual self-winding movement, freeing wearers from the need to manually wind their watches. These innovations weren't about making watches harder to get. They were about making them better, more practical, and ultimately, more desirable for a wider audience. Wilsdorf's vision was clear. Rolex was to be the watch of achievement, a reliable companion for pioneers and everyday heroes alike. It was a brand built on merit, not on manufacturer exclusivity. But somewhere along the way, that narrative began to shift. The journey from a functional instrument to an aspirational object wasn't a sudden leap. It was a carefully cultivated evolution. The seeds of desire were sown through continued association with human achievement. Take Sir Edmund Hillary's ascent of Mount Everest in 1953. While he wore a Smith's watch to the summit, the British expedition was equipped with Rolex Oyster perpetuals, cementing the brand's image as the timepiece for exploration, for conquering the impossible. This wasn't about overt luxury. It was about associating Rolex with peak human performance, with pushing boundaries. Then came the iconic designs, watches that transcended their utilitarian origins to become cultural touchstones. The Submariner, introduced in 1953, wasn't just a dive watch. It became the definitive dive watch, an emblem of adventure. And in 1963, Rolex unveiled the Daytona chronograph. Originally designed for racing drivers, it would eventually achieve legendary status, especially after actor Paul Newman famously wore one. His personal Paul Newman Daytona would later sell for a staggering $17.75 million in 2017, a testament to how far these tool watches had evolved in perception. Rolex wasn't just making watches, it was crafting narratives. It was subtly cultivating an image of prestige, not by limiting supply, but by associating itself with excellence, with moments of triumph. It was a brand that said, "You've arrived," not because it was hard to get, but because it was the best. Yet, even with this growing prestige, Rolex was still, at its core, a high-volume manufacturer. They were making a lot of watches, and they were selling them. Then came a pivotal moment, a strategic pivot that would redefine Rolex's trajectory and, arguably, the entire luxury watch market. In the 1960s, Rolex made a quiet but profound decision. It withdrew from publicly reporting its financial figures. This wasn't just an administrative change. It was the first subtle step towards crafting the illusion of rarity that defines the brand today. By becoming a private, non-profit foundation, the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, Rolex shielded itself from the quarterly demands of shareholders, granting it an unprecedented freedom to pursue long-term strategic goals. This structure allowed them to make decisions that might seem counterintuitive to a publicly traded company, decisions that prioritized brand mystique over immediate profit maximization. This move obscured Rolex's true production volume, which, even today, is estimated to be around 1 million watches annually. Think about that for a moment. 1 million watches a year. That's not the output of a boutique haute horlogerie brand like Patek Philippe, which produces approximately 60,000 units. Rolex is a mass producer by luxury standards. But by going dark on its numbers, Rolex created a vacuum, a space for speculation and, crucially, for the brand to control its own narrative. Without concrete figures, the perception of exclusivity could be carefully managed, even engineered. This secrecy became a cornerstone of its strategy. It allowed Rolex to lay the groundwork for what would become its signature move, engineered scarcity. They could produce a substantial number of watches, enough to maintain their market dominance. A staggering 30.3% market share by value in the Swiss watch industry in 2023, with estimated revenues of 10.1 billion Swiss francs. Yet simultaneously foster an environment where their most desirable models became almost impossible to acquire. It's a delicate balance, isn't it? To be both ubiquitous enough to be recognized globally, yet exclusive enough to be coveted. Rolex achieved this by strategically limiting the supply of specific, high-demand models to its authorized dealers. These dealers, numbering around 1,500 globally, are tightly controlled. They might receive only one or two highly coveted pieces, like a Daytona or a steel Submariner, per month. This isn't a supply chain issue, it's a deliberate choice. The average waiting list for a steel Rolex sports model can range from 1 to 5 years. For some, it's effectively a lifetime. This isn't organic demand outstripping supply in the traditional sense. It's a carefully orchestrated dance, a deliberate constraint on availability that creates an artificial bottleneck. Rolex doesn't sell watches directly to consumers online. Every purchase must go through an authorized dealer. This forces a ritual, a relationship, and often a long wait. The result? A velvet rope effect, where the difficulty of acquisition itself becomes part of the product's allure. The watch isn't just a timepiece. It's a trophy, a testament to patience, persistence, and often a significant prior relationship with a dealer. This strategy has a profound psychological impact. It transforms a mass-produced item into a perceived rarity, fueling a desire that goes far beyond the watch's intrinsic value. It creates a secondary market where retail prices are often dwarfed by market values. A Submariner date, for instance, retailing for approximately $10,800, can command 50 to 100% more on the secondary market. This isn't just about a watch. It's about a phenomenon, a carefully constructed illusion of scarcity that has made Rolex the undisputed king of the luxury watch world. So you understand the foundation of Rolex's unique position to a private entity, unshackled by quarterly earnings calls, with a deep history of innovation and an almost obsessive commitment to quality. But that's only half the story. The real genius, the true counterintuitive strategy, lies in how Rolex takes that foundation and builds an entire empire on something far more ephemeral: desire. Let's call it the scarcity engine. This isn't about making a few hundred watches a year like some ultra-exclusive independent brands. No, Rolex is a high-volume manufacturer. They produce an estimated 1 million watches annually. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 16 times more than a Patek Philippe. Yet, despite this considerable output, you can't just walk into an authorized dealer and buy a steel Submariner or a Daytona. Why? Because Rolex meticulously engineers a constant supply that is just below demand. This isn't an accident. It's a finely tuned mechanism. The average waiting list for a steel Rolex sports model can range from 1 to 5 years. Think about that for a moment. You want to spend, say, $10,800 on a Submariner date, and the brand tells you, sure, but you'll have to wait. This isn't just about managing inventory. It's about managing perception. It inflates desire to an almost irrational degree. The harder something is to get, the more we want it. It's a fundamental human truth. And the results are staggering. That $10,800 Submariner, its market value on the secondary market often exceeds retail by 50 to 100%. The Paul Newman Daytona, first introduced in 1963, became an icon, and his personal watch sold for a record $17.75 million in 2017. This isn't just about a watch, it's about a commodity, an investment. The average price of a Rolex on the secondary market increased by 20% in 2021 alone, far outpacing inflation and most other luxury goods. This isn't just a watch, it's a store of value. How do they maintain this delicate balance? Part of it is their unparalleled vertical integration. Rolex manufactures virtually all components in-house, from gold casting to movement production, across 4 main sites in Switzerland. They even established their own foundry in 2000 to produce proprietary materials like their 904L stainless steel or Oyster steel, which is harder to machine and more corrosion-resistant than the standard 316L used by most competitors. This gives them complete control over quality and supply, insulating them from external shocks that plague other brands. They're not just assembling watches, they're creating every single piece of the puzzle. But it's also about strategic limitation. Rolex's authorized dealer network is tightly controlled, with approximately 1,500 points of sale globally, to significantly fewer than many other global luxury brands. And even these dealers are limited in the number of popular sports models they receive annually, sometimes as few as 1 to 2 pieces per month for highly coveted references like the Daytona. Rolex doesn't sell watches directly to consumers online, forcing all purchases through this physical network. This enhances the ritual, the exclusivity, the hunt for the watch. It creates what collectors call the Rolex AD relationship, to where buyers build rapport and often purchase less desirable models, just to gain access to the highly sought-after pieces. It's a velvet rope effect, where the difficulty of acquisition itself becomes part of the product's allure. This brings us to the profound psychological impact of this strategy. Beyond the wrist, Rolex has mastered the psychology of unobtainability. It's not just about owning a watch, it's about overcoming a challenge, joining an exclusive club. The perception of unobtainability, fueled by those annual price increases to typically 3 to 5%, and that robust secondary market, creates a powerful feedback loop of aspiration. Each price hike, each story of a watch selling for double its retail price, reinforces its investment-grade perception. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Competitors often missed this crucial psychological aspect. They focused on features, on price, on trying to replicate the technical prowess. But they failed to understand that Rolex wasn't just selling timekeeping instruments. They were selling status, aspiration, and a tangible piece of perceived value. While other brands chased trends, Rolex maintained a largely consistent design language across its core collections for decades, fostering timeless appeal and strong resale value. This slow innovation approach, introducing new models or significant updates only every few years, builds anticipation and prevents market saturation. It also creates a powerful sense of heritage, with iconic model names like Submariner, Datejust, and GMT Master enduring for over 60 years. The network effect is crucial here. The high resale value of Rolex watches encourages more people to buy, further solidifying its status as a safe investment. The fear of missing out, or FOMO, is a powerful driver. Buyers know that popular models may become even harder to acquire in the future, so they jump on the opportunity when it rises, even if it means waiting years. Rolex isn't just selling a watch, it's selling an experience, a journey, a statement. Its marketing, though significant at an estimated 5% of its 10.1 billion Swiss francs revenue in 2023, rarely features the products themselves. Instead, it focuses on brand image, on sponsorships of exploration, sports, and arts to associating itself with achievement and excellence. The Rolex Crown logo, introduced in 1903, symbolizes victory and prestige, becoming one of the most recognized brand symbols globally. Even the launch of its certified pre-owned program in 2022, which aims to capture a portion of the lucrative secondary market estimated at $22 billion in 2021, is a strategic move. It's Rolex acknowledging and embracing the very market it helped create, further legitimizing the idea of a Rolex as an investment. So, what you have is a company that, despite producing 1 million watches a year, has convinced the world that its products are almost impossible to obtain. They've transformed a mass-produced item into an exclusive status symbol, not by limiting production to a handful of pieces, but by carefully managing desire itself. They have, in essence, perfected the art of the velvet rope, making the difficulty of entry a core part of the product's appeal. This isn't just clever marketing, it's a masterclass in business strategy, built on a series of counterintuitive decisions that defy conventional wisdom. But what exactly are those decisions, and what can you learn from them? Now here are 3 lessons from Rolex's Playbook you can apply to your own business. Lesson 1. Control your supply chain deeply. Invest in owning critical components or processes to ensure quality, control costs, and build a competitive moat. Rolex didn't just assemble watches, they bought the companies that made the gold, the dials, the movements to everything. This isn't just about efficiency, it's about unparalleled control. Lesson 2. Scarcity fuels desirability and value. Strategically manage product availability to create demand, maintain exclusivity, and reinforce perceived value, even for high-volume items. Rolex makes over 1 million watches a year, yet the most sought-after models are virtually impossible to buy new. This deliberate constraint transforms a luxury product into an aspirational quest. Lesson 3. Build an enduring, consistent brand. Maintain a clear, consistent brand identity and design language over decades to foster timeless appeal and strong recognition. Rolex's designs have evolved, yes, but they haven't